Welcome to Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories in the Texas outdoors. Today I sit down with a name known well across the Texas coast. A name that fought for trout, desalination, and the Texas coast as a whole. This is my conversation with David Rowsey. Cool. All right, you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I got Mr. David Rowsey here today, and I have been wanting to do this for a while. Like I've known who you are for a while, even before the podcast and stuff like that, because of just different friends I had in the space. So I'm glad that we're finally getting to do this. And with that being said, if you could just start us off by your first real memory in the outdoors, like the first one you have, and kind of run me through your progression as an outdoorsman or an angler, however it happened for you.
Okay. Hey, everybody. This is David Rowsey. All my friends affectionately call me Rowsey. So I was born in Louisiana in a family that loved the outdoors. My first memory in the outdoors is very young. Maybe not participating so much with a gun or a fishing rod, but being there at really early ages, maybe 4. Mm-hmm. That I can remember back to. The first animal I ever killed in the woods of Louisiana was a possum with an old 410 single shot when I was about 5. And my whole family duck hunted, fished, deer hunted, and I just kind of fell into it naturally. Both of my grandfathers were very, very good fishermen. My mother's side grandfather, Lejeune, he was a fly fisherman. And my dad's side, he was more of a topwater striped bass guy. He was kind of legendary, set some records in Louisiana for catching big stripers on big giant topwaters.
I didn't even know there were stripers in Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they have some big lakes, and he was really good at catching them, when they were dumping water at the bottom of the spillways is how he caught them. And, I've said this story on other podcasts. I can remember the day I got hooked on fishing.
Okay, perfect.
I think I was about 7. I was at my grandfather's place, and he had an old bayou across the street, across the highway. We were having some kind of family outing, maybe a fish fry or something. And, over there as a kid, everybody just ran around in shorts, no shoes. Mm-hmm. It's just the way you grew up. And this was in the early 70s, by the way. And I took a fishing rod, not even sure if the adults knew I'd left, but I went across this highway and was just casting. And I think I had a piece of bread or something. I just on a hook, I was a kid, didn't know what I was doing. And this father and son came walking down this bayou, and the bayou was real wooded, so they were right on top of me before I even saw them. And they had these stringers full of what we now know are hybrid bass, but I think back then we called them barfish in that part of Louisiana. And I was just mesmerized that they had so many fish. I mean, it was just like 10-foot stringers, and they were just full. And they were just dragging them through the woods back to their vehicle. And of course, being a kid, I've got a million questions, and I start asking them all this. And they, both of them, the father and son, the father first, and he probably, told the son to do it, but they both cut off their little buck-tailed jigs and gave them to me. And I tied them on with some kind of, knot that you tie your shoes with probably. And I immediately started catching fish. And, I can't even remember how I got them back to the house. It must have been on a sharp stick or something. I don't think I had a stringer, but maybe I did. And, I caught a ton of fish that day, and that was the day I got hooked. Walked them back across the highway to where the party was, all the adults, and they're like, "Oh my God, who'd you steal those fish from?" And I was like, "No, I caught them for real." And half of them believed me, half of them didn't. And anyway, that particular day just sparked it, and I was young. I was like 7. And our family has a farm in Louisiana, and it had some what we called bar ditches. The rest of the world probably knows as oxbow lakes, off of the levees.
This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself preparing for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a visit at www.gordyandsons.com.
And I would slip out, and somewhere or another I acquired a little rod and reel, and somebody told me or tied on a H&H spinnerbait, and I would walk down there and just cast it. And I finally walked up to where there was this little, a small pond that connected to the bar ditch and had a little drain in it. And I was kind of right in the corner of that. And when I hit that spot, man, it was just like ever cast, catching largemouth. And I was like, I'm just getting gut hooked. And, and by the time I'm 10, my family even realizes, like, man, this kid can really fish,
Yeah.
And so just done it all my life. I lived in Mississippi, even though all my family's in Louisiana. We lived in Natchez, Mississippi, and lived on this, in Texas, it'd be considered a river. Over there, it was a creek, St. Catherine Creek. And, we would just wander, snakes and alligators and just fish and just, catfish, bass, perch, anything we could catch. And my mother was dating a man from Texas for a long time, and they eventually got married. And when they did, is how I ended up in Texas. And I was very fortunate. My stepdad's a wonderful man. He just passed away this past December, but he raised me. I've been with him since I was 7, 8 years old, but when we got to Texas, I got there in the night because I was playing baseball, and the rest of the family had already come over. And, woke up one morning and didn't have any idea where I was. I just knew I'd flown into San Antonio, fell asleep going somewhere. And I landed in the little community of Hunt, Texas, which is really notorious right now because that's where all the flooding and the camps and everything. But it's on the Guadalupe River. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And we just happened to live right on the river. And my new home was on the river. And, I'd never seen clear water like that, literally walk down to the dock and there's like a 6 or 7 pound bass, I can see it. I'm like, oh my God, freaking out. And so started that deal and fishing there. There were rapids, and I'd go down to the rapids. I'd lift up the rocks, just messing around, and under the rocks were crawfish. So I'd start catching the crawfish. I was used to doing that. And I started hanging tree lines out of the cypress limbs, with just one crawfish on a line, and go back the next day, and all the lines would be bouncing and go down. And I would swim out to the lines with the stringer and get the fish off the hook. And I was dragging a bait bucket, doing all this, just free swimming. I'd take the catfish off, put it on a stringer, rebait the hook. And, I'd get on the bank and run down to the next one. So I wasn't swimming the whole time. But anyway, we could just get these beautiful catfish on call. Mom say, hey, let's have fish for dinner this week. And I was like, no problem. I'll go get them. And so that was during the summer of 82. And so I really didn't know anybody. That's, that second half of the summers, but I was perfectly entertained just, living on the river.
Yep, absolutely.
And I started school, and I met this young man, Stephen Fox, and his father, Eugene Fox, and he was a wildlife biologist for a man named Bobby Shelton, who was an heir to the King Ranch, 35,000 acre place. And he was one of the first kids I met, and we're still best friends to this day. So I meet him, and now I've got this beautiful 35,000 acres to play on, and it's just full of lakes, and they're all private. And got in on that deal, and still loving to fish. I'd been accumulating tackle for my whole childhood, and got in there, and these lakes were just sheer bluffs, clear water. The north side of the lake was this beautiful hydrilla grass, and I just started to learn lures really good doing that all through my teens, and got I mean, actually, I could already walk a dog by then really good. You know, I got that from my grandfather, that the striped bass fisherman, and but I started, you know, learning Texas rig worms, and my favorite, I started ripping buzz baits across these hydrilla and just catching really big bass. And at this point, I'm just gut hooked. You know, I'm so far into it, and I you know, went all through that, and wasn't going to go to college. I was actually, my first thought was I thought I was going to go to chef school. I love to cook.
Really?
Yeah. And then I'm kind of lazy, and I ended up checking into a junior college in Brenham, Texas, Blinn. And I mean, before I even took a class, I was on the road knocking on farmers' doors, you know, where I saw ponds. You know, I'd taken all my fishing stuff with me. So I had access to all these properties immediately. And I never kept the fish unless they wanted fish. You know,
of course.
I told them I would gladly clean them for them, you know, whatever, just give me access to fish. So did that deal, and I had moved back to San Antonio, and I started appraising real estate. And I'll kind of speed through the story.
Yeah. But whenever you know the things that are good, you tell me.
Yeah. And was well, let me back up a little bit. You'll probably have to.
It's cool. Back it up. Ain't no editing yet. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. But I just real early on, you know, when I was still in my teens, I got into baffing, and we were just walking into the back of the bay, you know, out of Loyola Beach.
Who were you with that day?
My best friend.
Okay,
the
gotcha.
Kid from the hill country.
You got in from the King Ranch property?
No, we just walked in. He had access to some property through the college, I believe, and he was going to school. It was A&I then, and you know, A&M now, and we walked out there, and he'd bought shrimp, and you know, I didn't know anything about it, nothing, and took shrimp out there. We're not catching anything, and I'm like, well, what are all these fish jumping? You know, and he's like, oh, those are mullet. And I'm like, well, why aren't we catching those? and he's like, no, man, that's what the trout and the redfish eat. And I'm like, well, why aren't we throwing shrimp? Yeah. And, you know, and I've got my bass box on the bank, and we ran out of shrimp. And, you know, I walked up there and grabbed a bomber long A, just beat to death from bass, walked back out and just real quick into it and caught a redfish. And I'd never felt power like that, you know. I was like, oh, and I've caught, you know, at that time I'd caught 10-pound bass, but I just, this redfish wasn't anything special, you know, but maybe a 25-inch redfish. So
one with character.
Yeah. And before the weekend was over, we caught numerous big trout, you know, in the 27-inch range, and fishing was that good back then. Anyway, you know, so I've said it before, but redfish is really what sparked my interest in saltwater, just because of the raw power of the fish. But you know, with Steven living down there, I had more and more time. I had a free place to stay, so I could come and walk in, and that's how it all got started. And, you know, then we'd find access to different places that we could walk into. And it didn't take long to realize for me that speckled trout were so much like bass, you know, as far as lures and presentations and structure-oriented, things like that. So I was real used to reading that kind of water, you know, oh, there's a grass bed, you know, and here I am guide now. And I've got not everybody, but I specifically had to tell guys to teach them, you know, how to make these casts, you know, and I was, you know, in my teens, and I was just using my rules of bass fishing, applying it to.
Yeah, translating right over.
Oh, right over. Lures, everything. So real quickly, I realized that, you know, trout were real similar to catching bass, and that was my forte. So I just kept that bass mentality, and just, you know, would use different, you know, lures and techniques, and just about everything you'd throw out of the bass box to catch.
Was there a big divide between the successes that you versus like Steven in a regular day? Like, were you like catching more big trout than Steven because of you having these strategies and stuff like that? If you're enjoying this episode or any others and want to support the project, I would highly encourage you to check out my new book, Laguna. 288 pages with over 300 images and illustrations, containing excerpts by Eric Glass, Chuck Nizer, Tim O'Brien, Bill Gamble, Ben Paschal, Ryan Sparrow, Michaela Elliott, Rick Hartman, Jaco Lucas, John Pilmer, Corey Bauman, Brian Robinson, and myself. Available at select stores, or you can order it directly at buylagunabook.myshopify.com.
Well, if Stephen were sitting here with us right now, he would just be cracking up laughing because, I always just obliterated him fishing. But I say that because I know he would just be giggling.
Yeah, of course.
But fishing was always my big thing. Now, I love to hunt just as much as I love to fish, okay? But Stephen is a deer man. And Stephen, he's wicked with a rifle.
Gotcha.
He's got so many, and, now he's a wildlife biologist like his father was and works for a really big rancher. And I'm not going to.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what.
But he's really good at his job. But we've always had that, Hunting was always, he had a little edge. Fishing.
Interesting. Okay.
But we both love to do each, And like I've got a cabin in Baffin on one of the spoil islands, and he loves to go down there, and we still enjoy doing it together. And
Well, so what I was getting at with what I wanted to go to with the big trout was more so like you mentioned you had early success with those big fish over 27. Was there kind of like a moment after the bass fishing where you were, and I don't know how far along this timeline is because I'm just spitballing here, but was there like a point where you were kind of being recognized because of the numbers you were putting up by other people?
Not at all.
Really?
Yeah. Not at all. We, I'm ashamed to say it now, but we didn't know any difference. We ate a lot of those fish. True story. But you got to keep in mind, there were so many big fish and so few of people doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, there were people on the water, but it's like 1% of what you see now.
Yeah.
So, it really was, an untapped resource, and we didn't eat them all, but, this will be something good to go into, people think I'm just like this hardcore conservation guy, and I am. But I love to eat fish. Okay. I've killed way more than my share of fish, way more than probably a lot of people combines fish. But the difference is as the population of fishermen have come up and, the trout quality's gone down, the numbers have gone down, there's a give and take. And many years ago, I realized what I was seeing just based on my experience out there, and I'm not throwing darts or spears at croaker, but when croaker got started in the 90s, the fishery was just unbelievable. The guides, and there weren't a ton of guides back then. There were some really good ones, all recognizable names, but, they'd come in with these huge ice chests full of, just monster trout because there was no top end limit on them. And, and that started bothering me because I started noticing as I'm learning more and more, and I'm on the water a lot. I wasn't guiding then, but I moved to Corpus to fish.
Yeah.
I left San Antonio in that career to come here, do the same career here, just so I could be on the water 5 days a week, And so I started noticing the change. And that's when I said, you know what, I'm not going to keep these fish anymore, or I'm only going to keep what I need to, or what I want to eat. And I started taking on that mentality as the years progressed. The fishery just, we had it really good, all through the 90s, through the 2000s, and probably about 15 or so, 12 to 15, started, as much time as I'm on the water.
2010 to 2012-ish, what you're saying, right?
Yeah, in that range, it was still pretty good. About 2012 to 15, I started noticing kind of a downward trend. I was guiding by that time. So it's not just me, and I've got 3 or 4 other guys in the water, casting in the best areas at the best time. And, we're still catching big fish, but we're not catching them every day, and and you don't know from year to year, is this just a cycle, or is this the way it's going? Well, it became apparent before the 21 freeze that this is absolutely the way it's going. It's going down. So but just for me personally, I had the foresight to see that was coming, and that's kind of when I started taking on that conservative mindset in the mid 2000s. And but I love to eat fish, still do, but I'm just real pro keep what you're going to eat fresh. There's just so many hands in the pot now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to back up a little bit to like the years right before you started guiding, kind of maybe what pushed you to go that direction, since you already had a career in, was it valuing real estate?
Yeah, real estate appraising. Well, I started fishing tournaments in the late 90s.
With who? Like you have partners and stuff like that? Any like mentionable names?
Some you did, some you didn't.
Gotcha.
Tom Nix had a tournament called the Bath and Bash. It was the first first live weigh-in tournaments on the coast. And he started them right here in Corpus. His little paper, the Saltwater Anglers, the paper he started, the little free, and it's still out on the shelves now. But Tom started it. He was a weatherman here, and he really cool backstory there. But he wanted to try this, and he did it. And I had my best friend down here, a guy named David Murray. He wanted to enter it, and we were good. We knew we were pretty solid fishermen, but he wanted to enter it, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And we did, and I've told this on other podcasts before. We get to the captain's meeting, and it's just an absolute who's who of fishing. You're young, but Doug Bird, that name.
I've heard. Yeah. I think I will hear some of these names that you're going to mention.
Yeah, Doug Bird, Ron Banky, Jim Wallace, who had set the state record, the new state record. The Bosky brothers out of the back of the bay, just real badass fishermen. Jay Watkins,
of course.
They were all there. We're at the captain's meeting. I'm like, what the hell have you gotten us into? I've wasted $150, and there was terrible weather in the tournament.
Okay.
I mean, really bad. The first day it was a February tournament, and a front was coming in. So as the front comes in, sucks in the southeast wind. It was literally sustained 30, gust over 40.
My favorite.
Yeah. And there were almost no fish weighed in the next day. And
wow.
We went back out the second day, and we had like a 2-hour window before this just nasty norther blew in, and we whacked them. Just smoked them. And we were so proud of ourselves, had no idea what the end result was going to be, but it started blowing, and we had a hellacious bag, and we're like, oh, whatever, let's get back. And there weren't many fish weighed in yesterday, and we ended up winning the tournament.
Really?
With all these,
what was the score on the bag?
Oh, I can't even remember.
Okay.
I really can't remember, but it wasn't much. But we didn't have much to beat from the first day, because almost everybody zeroed the first day in the weather. And so we won that. We were outside of ourselves, and I just got to say one thing about because Jay Watkins, when I was a young man, and he knows this. Jay and I are very, very, very close friends.
I got Jay confirmed eventually. Hopefully this year we're going to get it together and do it.
Well, he'll be your best interview ever.
I've heard that one before.
But so at that time, there was no internet. At this time, and it was just coming out.
Okay, so like late 90s, early 2000s.
90s, yeah, this was late 90s, and so anything that I learned just by reading that, Jay fished like I like to fish, lures, wade fishing. So anything he would write, he would be in the, the local paper or some magazines. And I was just soaking it up like a sponge and taking what he would say about Rockport, trying to apply it over here. Yeah. So I'd never met Jay or anything. I was in my 20s. I was maybe a touch older than you.
Heard. Yeah. No, I'm listening. Yeah.
Yeah, and but you know, we won the tournament, and not that anybody, nothing was expected, but nobody said congratulations or anything.
Yeah.
And, you know, I really didn't care. I mean, we'd won $5,000, man. We were,
Yeah, I'd be lit up.
yeah, we were lit up. And but one guy did come up and congratulate us, and it was Watkins.
Really?
Yeah, and that at the time he didn't know that I admired him so much. You know, it's the first conversation I'd ever had. You know, shaking his hand, I'm shaking like a schoolgirl. And but you know, time came on, fished a lot more tournaments. I was very fortunate to win a bunch of them, and you know, with guys like Jay in there, and he kicked my ass plenty of times too. But I was able to pull out some, and but just from the competition, and you know, even though I was young, I was winning enough that you know.
Yeah, you're making a name for yourself too.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, there had to be some recognition there, like,
And rightfully so. Yeah, well deserved.
Like, who is this young guy?
Yeah.
And then you know, got into the Trout Masters, and those were really big up and down the coast.
Can you try to describe what those events were like?
Absolutely, they were the best events. I would start tournament fishing again if that format would come back.
What kind of format?
Well, it was a 2-day tournament. It was an individual tournament, so there was no team. You could fish with your buddy on the same boat. You had to keep your fish separated. There were boundaries, so you couldn't. You know, so many of these boats do so fast now. They all run to their little safe spot.
Yeah.
And you know, so you had to perform in every bay system on the coast. You know, so you couldn't. You know, so if a guy like me went to Matagorda, which I did a couple times, and got a win, which I did not get a win there, but you know, it happened all the time. You know, you had to perform in every bay system. You know, it wasn't just run a
128 miles an hour. Yeah.
120 miles for, you know, 100 miles an hour to get to your little comfort zone.
Yeah.
So it really, really had some fierce competitors in it, and you really learned who the cream of the crop was, you know, and I just loved that format. Oh, you could also launch at any launch that favored you, but you couldn't leave until, you know, GPS time. And so that made it safer for bad weather, because you could, you know, launch from wherever.
Okay.
And the unsafe part of it was when the clock hit 6 o'clock, you know, everybody just went
hammer down.
But the fastest boats back then were 60 miles an hour, you know, and I think mine topped out at about 38, you know.
So like mine.
Yeah. So it was a great format, and you would have, like, you know, they had a pro division and a amateur division. And like the amateur, you know, they would average like 300 anglers.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people throwing their, you know, getting in there. And once you won one, you had to shift over to the pro where the guides were.
That is actually really cool though. Like kind of earning your spot.
You kind of earning your spot, just kind of like you do in the Bass Elite Series or something like that. And so that was just an awesome format. And I fished quite a few of those. And I think it was the fourth one that I fished before I you know, won one.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was such a prestige tournament. It was just like.
Do you remember that tournament in detail? Like
every detail.
You want to describe it?
Well, sure.
You can be as cocky as you want, or you can be as chill. I don't care.
Yeah, I know you don't, but I don't want to be perceived as cocky either.
Well, I mean, people listening to this know that you're not. So.
Well, that particular tournament, I had found some fish along the ship channel, and the water dropped off to like 60 feet, you know, and the waiting area, you know, was no more than about maybe 12 to 15 yards wide.
Really?
And there were, from the ship and barge traffic, you know, it had eroded parts of the bank. So there were all these little dead end guts and little humps and mounds, you know. And so there's just all this crazy structure. And when there was no fish, you could really cast off the deep end and just work it back up that ledge they would, you know, sit on. Yeah. And I kind of found the place by accident, eating lunch one day, and just pulled in there to get out of the wind. And there's a lot of bait, got out of the boat, caught a couple 4-pounders real quick, and then I caught, maybe a 5, and I was like, it's middle of the day. I'm gonna come back and give this a real shot. And I did numerous times, and every time got better and better and better. It's like, oh, okay. So, and it was kind of the place, it's one of those places where boats are just driving by, just under the radar.
Yep, under the nose.
Everybody,
Absolutely.
it's like one of those deals. Everybody's got to go to the bathroom, but there's fish right here in front of the marina,
Oh.
And so I did that, and the first day was pretty tough. I had a real average bag, it was like 9 pounds. But when I got to the weigh-in, not really anybody had much of a bag. It was just a September bite, and nobody had a big bag, so I wasn't out of it by any means. And the next day, got in there and started fishing and lost a real good fish right off the bat. Caught some 3, maybe a 4-pounder, and the sun kind of came up. And I'd walk through one of those little guts, those washouts, and I'd come up on one of those mounds that remind me of moguls, like on a ski slope.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So I'm kind of standing on one, and the sun hit just right. I was throwing a full-size super spook, and I had a second rod with me tucked in my belt. And I'm working that spook, and the sun was just perfect. And I watched this really good trout by tournament standards come right up under the spook, and he never hit it, or she never hit it. She just looked at it, and I just watched her fall tail down back into this gut. And I'm like, oh my God, I need that fish. Crank it in, literally, because the bank's right there. Just threw my rod up on the bank, grabbed my other rod that was rigged with the greatest soft plastic in the world for big trout, in my opinion, Bass Assassin.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
All right, duly noted. Eh?
Yeah, the OG. And still my favorite soft plastic. Use it every day. And but anyway, I threw behind where she went down and let it go to the bottom. Bottom was probably 4.5 feet deep, in between these moguls, and bumped it like 2 times, got a hit, set the hook. It's her. I got her.
Oh, it's the greatest feeling ever.
Yeah, that was my anchor fish. I didn't know that I was going to win the tournament at that point, but I knew that was it.
Does it make you a contender? Yes.
Oh, yeah. It just raised my day bag up for a hot September day, from about, 9 pounds to about 15 pounds for the day. So I knew it was a really good fish. And went to the weigh-in. Weigh-in was in Rockport. And at that time, it was still a kill tournament. You just had a clear bag. You threw your fish on ice and just walked them in.
Huh.
And there was none of this. Well, live weigh-in had started.
Mm-hmm. Like we had just talked about. Yes.
Yeah, but Trout Masters had not picked up on it yet. And anyway, you got these clear bags, so you can see everybody's fish, and and you're like, decent bag. I don't know where he was standing. There's 300 of you. You don't know all these guys. And anyway, we all got weighed in, and I start hearing little whispers and stuff. And a buddy of mine, walks in and goes, "You want it?" And I'm like, "How do you know?" He goes, "Just trust me, you want it." I'm like, oh. Now I'm getting nervous, And sure enough, I want it. So that was the first Trout Masters, which was just, I guess for me personally, I won others, but that first one was, just such a goal of mine, and got it done, and fished a bunch more over the years, won some, got Angler of the Year one year, for, performing up and down the coast and within certain bay systems or boundaries.
And that's an award given to just the community within the Trout Masters.
Yeah, it's a whole deal. You had to fish the whole series.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had to fish every tournament, and it's an accumulation of points.
That's awesome.
And weight and all that. So that was a big deal. And so I fished tournaments through about 2012, and that's about the time that I hung it up. And I had started guiding part-time in 05, I believe, 06, somewhere in there. And I realized that it was really hard to be a fishing guide, even though I still had my appraisal company. it worked out fine. But once I went full time guiding, I quickly realized it's hard to stay on tournament type fish and fulfill your client's day as well.
So you have to do one or the other.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And this is, this was when burn boats were starting to get really popular. And whoever's listening doesn't know what a burn boat is. It's a style of, I don't want to call it fishing. It's a style of finding fish where, you're in a high rack boat, and you're
Just running around.
Screwing up everybody else fishing, and you're just looking down from the tower just to spot fish and, GPS them, and hopefully they're there on the day you come back. So
I didn't even know that. I didn't know it got that far. I know people run around on shorelines and burn it because, it's a big problem right now.
Oh, it's a huge problem.
But I did not know that people would just run, find a biomass market.
Oh yeah. That's the whole purpose of burning.
Now people are just doing it wrong nowadays and still ruining it.
Yeah. So it's like a plague out here now.
Yeah, you're telling me.
So that's when, the first few burn boats really started in the early 2000s. I know the guys and fished against them in Trout Masters, and but it was very few of them doing it. And but anyway, by that time, 2012, I was having conflict of trying to stay on the right kind of fish and keep my customers happy. And I just said, and burn boats were kind of coming online. And so I just kind of hung it up. And, I fished a tournament in 2017. It'd been 5 years since I'd fished one, and a big tournament. And I love the competitive fish. I really do. I mean, it gets my juices flowing. I mean, it makes me really get my head rolling and thinking outside of the box, and,
makes it fun, but it just adds a level of complexity. I totally agree.
Yeah, it does. And, we fished that tournament in 17 and, got second in it. It was like a 50 boat deal. And it really sparked my juices, but I was like, I just, not going to do it. And then last year, I think 19 or 20, not interested in tournaments. The Legends series was here in town.
Mm-hmm.
It was bad weather. Watkins and I just happened to talk on the phone, and we mentioned something about this tournament because his son Jay Ray was fishing it. And I think I just jokingly said, we ought to fish this damn thing. I said, I'm on fish down here. I said, I can't put my clients in that kind of weather, but you and I can catch them. And so we entered it with it was a 3-man team, and we entered it. His youngest son, Ryan, who was a national collegiate bass champion, was our third. And we didn't win. I think we ended up in 8th or 9th place. And we had some bad, just tournament shit. I think Ryan dropped a 7-pounder, and either myself or Jay dropped a fish that would have upgraded another fish by 3 pounds. But we had a blast. And Jay and I always wanted to fish tournaments together, but to his credit, he always fished tournaments with his boys, which you got to love that. And so it was just I did it that year, just so I could say I fished a tournament with Jay. And, but this past year, some really good clients of mine, a couple young doctors, Tim Rudolph and Chris Stutz, they taught me into fishing the Legend series with them this year. And it was a lot of fun. We didn't win anything. I didn't even know there was an angler of the year. And when I found out, I was like in 5th place, and I'm like, oh man, I got to get serious about this. There's prize money involved, but it didn't work out in the last tournament. But it was a lot of fun. And, for a guy, 55 at the time, fixing to be 56, it's amazing how getting involved in those tournaments gets you wound up and your heart pumping, man.
Absolutely.
If you're a competitor, and I very much am, it was a lot of fun. But there's so many good fishermen out here now.
Yeah.
I mean, guys your age, y'all have had, with technology, with social media.
For sure.
I mean, geez Louise. I mean, there are some guys that are just way beyond their years, with a rod and reel. And I respect them for that. I hate the way that people fish or pre-fish or fine fish, this whole burning thing.
Yep. Yeah. I'm not a fan.
Yeah. I think it's just not my forte. It works. It's extremely effective.
Just seems unsportsmanlike.
Well, it does to me too, but to each their own. I felt the same way about croaker fishing. I finally got to the point where I realized I was like, it's not the croaker that's doing all the damage. It's the guy behind the rod. And, I know a lot of guys that run bird boats. If they see a wader, man, they go way out of their way to get around you,
Yeah.
And they're cool, but I mean, unfortunately, the other half are just right up your tail and just zigzagging on the shoreline. And as a guide that wants to move down the shoreline to keep clients and fish,
kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, they've run the fish off the shoreline. So, but anyway, that's the way they do it now, and it is what it is, and that's why I haven't really participated. There's one of the there's 3 or 4 reasons I don't participate actively in them anymore, but that's definitely one of them.
What was one of the biggest changes you saw? This is the last question about tournaments, and I want to go into. I'll give you kind of a rundown of where I'm thinking. So I want to do one more thing about tournaments. I would like to kind of talk to you about your own big trout stories, and then I really want to talk about desalination. So, that 3 sounds good.
Yeah, I just so, I can talk to you on some level about desal and what I've been involved in. I am not an expert.
I'm not saying you are, but someone who's that passionate about it, I wanted to hear straight from you. So
okay, yeah, cool.
Okay, so last question about tournaments. What is one of the big differences you saw between like being able to compete in 2019, 2020 with Jay at the Legends versus kind of kind of what you saw when you first entered those first 4, 5, 6 years, or first 4, 5, 6 tournaments under the Trout Masters? Like, what were the biggest differences that maybe you wish we're still seeing in tournaments today?
Well, the biggest difference, the one I just mentioned,
yes,
is the burn boats.
Okay.
They're, I do it the old school way. I get out, figure out patterns, move down the shoreline. Where's the bait? What kind of structure on it? And that's what I grew up doing, admiring guys like Watkins and all these badass dudes that fish Trout Masters.
Mm-hmm.
They were all really good at it. And so now, with the burn boats, anybody can find fish. There's no, they don't know why fish are there. They just know fish are there. Mm-hmm. They're not putting patterns together or anything.
Don't connect
like
the dots.
That.
Nope.
No, it's just, hey, I was listening to Turnpike Troubadours on 10, and I saw a bunch of trout there. So I marked the spot, and I hope I've got a boat. And most of these guys, their team, they'll have a burn boat and then they'll have a speed boat, and, so, that's their whole game plan. Find them in the burn boat, speed to them the next day. And the thing about it is everybody's got a burn boat. They've all seen the same fish. So who gets to them the fastest?
Yeah.
And so, as much as I know about the Laguna and Baffin, I can find some discrete little area that's holding good fish. And used to be that would be enough, but now they just run over everything. Yeah. So there's just nothing sacred anymore. So that's definitely the biggest difference.
Gotcha.
For me.
Gotcha.
Is that
Yeah, no, I was wondering more so because I was wondering how like the egos were back then versus now. If they were worse, if they were better. Mostly the biggest caveat here being the introduction of social media.
Yes, the social media, that's just taking us on this whole other road. But, I haven't been around tournaments that much.
That's also a good point. Yeah.
But, and there's so much out there, people can copycat so easily, they'll hear Watkins say something on his Instagram. And I've got examples of me, talking to some young guides and something I told them that I know for a fact, that I came up with and just introduced them to. Uh-huh. Then they're making videos saying, just like, there's a lot of that out there, people there's just no shame in the game anymore.
Yeah.
Just
that's one of the changes for sure. There's no shame.
Yeah. No shame. And teach their own. Like I said, there's a lot of young badass fishermen, and, I certainly wish I'd have had all those advancements, growing up. But at the same time, I'm glad I didn't, because I think it makes me more of a raw bone fisherman. I can go out just about any time, no matter the weather, and figure out a pattern to catch fish.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks, can't do that. A lot of them can, and I think, as they're burning, they're learning. They're like, okay, well, I saw them here this year and the weather was this. So maybe they start putting a pattern together like that over the years while they're burning. So, I mean, they're learning.
They're learning something.
They're learning something. and I'm just learning to be dumber and dumber because I refuse to do it to compete. So,
yeah.
But that's just me. I mean, to each their own. I'm not knocking them. It's just, it's just not my style.
I'll knock them for you. I think there is less prestige in burn boats than finding it the hard way.
Yeah.
I'll just be straight up with you in there. With that being said, I want to move over more towards big trout and your stories with big trout. I see the trout on the wall over there. Curious what size that is and if there's a crazy story behind it.
Not a crazy story behind it. It just happens to be the first trout ever caught over 9 pounds.
Really?
Yeah. And that was back in those walk-in days.
Wow.
And so nothing, it is the only trout I've ever mounted.
I mean, it's a giant. It's a big fish.
Yeah, it's a beautiful 9-pounder.
It looks so much bigger than 9.
Yeah, but no, it might have been like 9 1/4.
Heard.
I know it was over 9.
Heard.
But I've just never had a desire to mount another one, and I've caught a lot bigger than that over the years. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not actually really. I'm just, I understand. Okay. Well, I mean, some of the most prominent stories you have involving big trout, I'd love to hear.
It would take all night.
All right. Well, give me like 1 or 2.
Okay. Let's see. Well, I will say, all the years I've been fishing since way back then in the late 80s till now, just give you some perspective of how special big fish are.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, at this many days on the water, if you can imagine how many this is, I've caught 6 over 10 and 1 over 11. And so that is a lot of man hours to get that. I've caught countless 7 to 10. I mean, literally, I can't even begin to count them. And, I'm just thinking of one. I'll tell you the story of the longest fish I caught.
Perfect. Okay. That's always a good jumping off point.
Yeah. So way back when, early 2000s, Rapala came out with a topwater called a skitter walk.
Oh.
Okay. Still a very popular lure.
Yeah.
Great lure. And I bought a couple, and I was in Baffin on some flats that have some deep water around them. Well, it was in the Badlands. It's like, I'm talking like it's a secret. Hell, everybody knows Badlands now. It's like a parking lot. Anyway, I was up on the flat, and I was kind of standing where I could cast on the flat or off the break where it dropped us into about 3.5 foot of water. And I was going along, and the bite had kind of died, and I was just kind of messing with lures and kind of rounded the edge of this rim into this little bowl and threw the skitter walk out there, and there was some bait, and fired it out there and started working it back, and boom, reel it in, it's redfish, and throw it out again, another redfish immediately. And now I'm realizing there's probably a school of
little group,
10 or 15 fish. Even though it was a cold time of the year, there was a little school in there. So I had, like I said, had gotten kind of, a lull area. And so I was just having fun, cast them, and man, I'm throwing out there now. I'm just ripping this thing, just working it. I mean, I'm working it so hard, like the back hook's coming around and catching the line sometimes. I'm just extreme with it. And anyway, explosion, boom, miss it, boom, miss it, boom, gets it. And I'm just horsing it in, and I get it from, you to I, 7 feet away. And I'm like, holy shit, and it's just this monster trout. I mean, just huge. And now I'm starting to shake, and I'm like, oh my God. And I get it up to me, and this was this before bow grips,
Yeah.
And I get it up to me, and she's hooked really good. And I managed to get my hand on her and realize she's a really big fish. And my boat's a long way away, but I'm thinking, hey, maybe this is my longest fish ever. And but I always carry. Berkeley had this little black digital scale,
Okay.
that was
Yeah.
stiff in our
Absolutely.
waders. And I weighed her, and she was 10 and a half. And I was like, I've got to, she was so long. So I took the time and I walked all the way back to my boat, and I put her on the stringer and kept her upright and just kind of walked her the whole way. I was being really gentle, and it was cool out. It wasn't a problem. And got to the boat, and she was just I don't want to say she was 33, but you couldn't have slid a hair.
So she was 33.
Yeah, she was 33. And so, that was a really, that was a great memory with the new topwater
Yeah.
that had just come on the market. I'll tell you a great one,
Oh, perfect.
a 10-pound story.
I'm going to call this one the 10-pound episode.
I mentioned earlier, I've got a cabin in Baffin, and I've got this really good group of clients that all share a cabin, and, they'll come down in a group. Sometimes there might be, 7 to 10 of them. And this is one of those days, there was like 8 of them, and, they set it up way in advance. And I called Watkins because I need a second boat. I said, hey, man, stay at my cabin, run the second boat for me. And he's like, man, he goes, I hadn't been fishing down there. It's like, just all you got to do is go with me. When I wave at you, just pull up short, and, we'll all be in the same water, basically.
Yeah.
And we did that and got our guys on the boat and came around, set up, and it was pretty calm out, real light north wind. And we were within yelling distance of each other.
Okay.
And I had a client on either side of me. And the week before, I'd had a client break off a big trout in this area. And anyway, we were going along. I was throwing a white bass assassin, my favorite all-time color.
Really? White?
Solid white. Any base
Interesting.
system, ride or die.
Okay. Gotcha.
I mean, that's my workhorse.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm standing in between clients. I get a hit, set the hook, and really I can tell it's a big fish. Don't even know if it's a trout. And just dogging the drag, almost feels like a drum. And it comes up and rolls, and now I can tell it's a trout. But it's still pretty far out. And I tell my client, Matt, who's a great client friend now, he's standing beside me, and I go, "You fixing to see a 10-pound trout?" And he's like, "BS." And I was like, "Dude, I swear I can tell by the way it's pulling, because big trout don't fight like big trout.
They don't.
They fight like drum."
Yep. They just stay at like 30 foot away. And
They just, yeah. So, and I could tell because I keep a tight drag. I could tell that when she was getting drag, it takes a lot of fish to get drag on me. And I got her in, put her on the boga grip. And I told Matt, I said, I'm not even going to look at it. I said, you call it. And so I lifted her out of the water. He sees the number on the boga, and he's like, oh my God. And I'm like, well, what is she? And he goes, 10 and a half. And he's like, God, I can't believe you caught that fish right. And this guy has spent so much money with me trying to catch these fish. And he's caught some great fish. He just hadn't caught a 10.
Yeah.
And so we're holding it up. And what you'll learn about Jay, he's a talker.
I know. I've had the fortune of fishing him 2 or 3 times already.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's over there to my left, within 100 yards of me, and it's pretty calm. And he's like, is that what I think it is? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh my God, are you serious? Is that a 10-pounder? And I'm like, yeah.
Is that 10-pounder?
Yeah. 10-pounder, Rowsey. And so that was a really cool story because, my saltwater hero was running a second boat with me and witnessed me catch one of my 10s. So that was a cool 10-pound story.
It is an amazing story. Is there any story where it doesn't even have to be a trout, but like a really memorable fish? And the way I'll explain it is, just recently I've been working on a little film project with me and my buddy Ryan. And one of the days we were fishing in about ankle deep water, and I knew that this big school of drum had been in there. I referenced it before when I first got here. And it was one of those things where we just couldn't get a fish to come in, to actually take the fly. And finally, when it starts raining, it's been an hour and a half. We're just guessing the flies because it's getting too dark for them to see. But then if it's too heavy, it gets splashy. Then they spook because they're in groups of 9 to 10, and they're all in about 4 inches of water. So it's very finesse stuff. And finally, we get that one connect. and the fish may have only been 2.5, 3 pounds. But the video when he releases it, like he's cheering and we're like, it's the content or the context behind it. Is there a fish like that for you that you're like, it meant a lot because of the circumstance?
Yeah. I had a lot of fish in tournaments like that, that were just down to the wire. And, oh man, I had so many of those. I had so much good fortune in tournaments in the last hour. It's amazing.
Do you think that's a big difference between winners and people who don't make the podium?
Yeah. Well, the big difference is fortitude. Guys that can grind it out when it's really tough and just have confidence that your fish are there and they just haven't been eating. And that's something that tournaments taught me, because I couldn't figure out why I couldn't win one of those trout masters early on. And I realized the guys that were winning were just sticking out these areas and they knew they were there. That's a whole nother story, but it taught me a big lesson back then, and that became my style of fishing. It's what we call now the grind,
Yep.
It's the grind. But I had a lot of those kind of stories in tournaments. But I'll tell you a story that I've never told on a podcast, and it wasn't about a fish that ever got caught. Okay, but I was running my Mayak, not an elevated platform, just a regular on the deck Mayak. And I was way back in the bay, and I'd come around a corner on the shoreline. And as I was making the corner, I saw, a big wake moving. And, I just thought it was a redfish, and he's right where I've got to run. And as I'm running, I look down and I see a trout that looks like it's as long as this coffee table. I mean, that's an exaggeration.
No, I understand where you're going from. Yeah.
But it was
tank, yes.
Big. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say 35 inches. I mean, it was at least that, call it 3 foot. And I was just in awe. And I was just like, I just pulled the boat, not over to fish, but over to get away from it, just to not spook it.
Yeah.
And there was no doubt in my head that was a state record fish. And I fished for that fish. That was in the summer. And I fished for that fish for 2 months straight in that area. And back in the summer months, early on, I got to where I was only fishing at night just to get away from the crowd.
Oh, smart. Yeah.
And so fishing that area, at night, I don't know how many times I lost just devastating fights, and I don't know if I ever hooked the fish or not, or if that was the one, but I got broke off and I'm using heavy gear, I'm back there with freaking 30-pound leader on, and you're breaking the leader. It's not coming off. No. I've lost half a dozen lures back there on these fish.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, so, there's always that in the back of my head, but I don't know if I ever hooked the fish or not, but it kind of feels like it.
Yeah.
But I know that fish was back there. And so that kind of thing's real memorable to me, to put that much time in on one fish that you saw and just beating yourself to death over it, and had got a lot of memorable fish that, what should have been. I was fishing on this bar one day and got there. It was real foggy. It was late February. And I was throwing a full-size spook, which was, probably my all-time favorite topwater. And with the middle hook removed, by the way. And
is that personal preference, or is that because of the way that it affects the action? Or
it's the way the fish gets hooked up. And I'll come back to that.
Of course, yeah. Okay.
But I was on this bar and I was working this lure to me, and just had this huge swirl on the lure, never hit it. And I kind of slowed it down. She came back up on it, and this time her back came out of the water, and it was definitely a trout. And I've told this story so many times. I've told people, whenever she swirled, I was in like knee deep water. She displaced so much water that it was like you could see the sand all of a sudden, not literally.
I know.
But it's like she moved that much.
Made an indentation for sure. Yeah.
I mean, it was ungodly. And, and that particular spot is where I just happened to have caught my biggest trout ever. So, big trout being there was not a shocker.
Yeah.
So that one, those are, at least two stories that I wish I had those back.
Yeah.
And did you ever know of the famous Padre Island fishing guide, Billy Sandifer?
So I've heard the name handful of times, yes.
Yeah,
But
okay.
I never, obviously I've not been able to talk to him.
I've got a magazine over here. I'll let you flip through while we're talking.
Or after, no, we're good.
Yeah, but so Billy, he's known as the Padre of Padre. I mean, he was the guide. He was the only guide that was licensed to fish on the National Seashore to take charters.
I think J.C. Norris actually mentioned him a little bit, maybe, on our podcast.
Billy is a legend in these parts, and they still put on he did this huge beach cleanup every year. I mean, they average about 25 tons of trash in a day that they pull off the beach. But anyway, through do you know Mike McBride?
Yes, I actually have been trying to get Mike to get a podcast, but it's just scheduling's been a little bit iffy, but it's gonna happen. He wants to fish first, and I said yes. It's just scheduling.
Yeah. Well, Mike and I met Mike back in the old Trout Masters days, and that's how we got together. And Mike, he called me and said, "Hey, I'm heading down." He goes, "I'm gonna go fish on the beach with Sandifer." And I'm like, "Damn, man!" I said, "I've always wanted to fish with that guy." And he's like, "Well, come with us. It's just the two of us." And I'm like, I don't want to get in y'all's way. And he's like, "No, I insist." He cleared it with Billy. I got to go. And Billy and I his old beat up rusty Suburban in the foulest mouth you've ever heard on a white man. I mean, jeez, he was unbelievable. Just the king of one-liners. I mean, he could just burn you down so bad. And but he and I really hit it off. And we had a great day fishing. We didn't catch that many fish, but he and I he put Mike in the back of the Suburban. I got the front seat all day. And so anyway, it was really cool because this guy was such a legend. I didn't know how to fish the beach, and he was the King Kong of it, okay? Mm-hmm. And luckily for me, Billy wanted to learn to fish in the bay.
Oh.
So, and Billy and I were maybe 20 years apart in age.
Okay.
Something like that. That sounds about right. And so anyway, we become really good friends, and he lives here in the Bluff in this little old trailer, and and the guy's a philosopher. He's just the coolest cat in the world. Okay. And so we start fishing together a lot. And I was still tournament fishing back then, and Billy he was one of the only guys I would take on my boat pre-fishing because he was just such a rock. Nothing. Anything we did was written in stone, wasn't going any further. But anyway, we were coming off the beach one day, and it's an all-day deal, sun up to sundown, and it's dark. And Billy poses this question to me, and he goes, what ability do you wish you had as a fisherman that you can't ever get? And I was like, well, I don't know. Didn't really know where he was going. I said, if I ever get to heaven, I'd like to hit rewind on the VHS and have a underwater view of the trout that I've lost and missed, the big ones, just to see.
Just to know.
Just a little tag at the bottom, 32.5, 13 pounds. I would just like to know. And he's like, "Oh, that's pretty good." And I'm like, "What about you?" And he's like, and I'm not going to use his language, but he says, and he was real gruff, old, smoked cigars. And he goes, "I just wish I could look right goddamn through that water and see every fucking one of them."
Sounds like my answer.
Yeah. And I was like, "Oh man, that'd take all the sport out of it. Fuck the sport. I just want to catch them." Yeah, that's just a small presentation of Billy. He's unbelievable. But going back, I'm bouncing that story off what we were talking about before, where, all these.
The fish that never were. Yeah.
The fish that never were. So.
You mentioned you wanted to kind of give a little bit more, not credit, but more exposure to some of the folk that you like Billy, that you got to spend time with.
during our break there, I was thinking we were left it talking about Billy, or about to talk about Billy, and it got me to thinking how fortunate I've been, and a lot of it had to do with tournaments, because I was getting name recognition because I was winning tournaments. So some of these old salts kind of took to me.
Yeah.
They knew I was a pretty serious cat, even though I was young. And, Doug Bird, we mentioned his name earlier. And Doug was the original guide here. He started in 1971, I believe.
Wow.
And he was the first one. And he put so many of the guides that are now even past, and a few of them are hanging on. He put so many of them in business. And Doug was a bass guy. He loved to fish out of the boat, trolling motor, but he was a great wade fisherman back in the day also. And I'd go over to Doug's house, and he had a bedroom that he used as an office, and the whole wall was stacked, end to end with leather-bound journals where he documented every day on the water, and he would let me just flip through them, read them, and it was just so cool. And I just thought, how lucky am I? And, of course, I told you about Jay, and, then I got to meet Billy, and we became unbelievable. Billy never had any kids, and there was a few of us, probably three of us in particular, that he thought of as his sons.
The prodigal children, gotcha.
Yeah, he would, we sent a lot of emails back then, and he would always sign off email dad, so we were all tight. And, another one of my favorite guys that Doug Bird actually got in the business was a guy named Johnny Menelewski, and Johnny passed this past year. And Johnny was just this legendary red fisherman. I mean, and Johnny's deal was spotting schools, but Johnny could see schools he never used a burn boat to do it. It's always from the deck of the boat. But Johnny had real special vision. I mean, literally, like 2010. And it could be choppy out in the Laguna, and he could see freaking redfish a quarter mile away. It was unbelievable. And he was so good at it. And, just guys with those just innate ability just to be badass fishermen, they were just doing it their way. And, they weren't, shortcutting anything. They were just gritty, just salty fishermen. And, those guys, Johnny's passed, Doug's passed, Billy's passed. And, I guess I want the audience to know how fortunate I feel to have gotten to be very close to guys like that as a young man. And, when I started guiding, Jay and I were friends. We had never fished together at that point. And, Jay, when I called Jay and I said, hey, he already knew I was going to start guiding. The public didn't. But, I called Jay, and he's like, man, I'm glad you're doing it. You're going to be an awesome guide. But the deal, with our relationship, we talk about fishing a lot, but in that conversation, Jay just, he'd been there and done it for so long. He just taught me the business side of it, how to, I knew basically what to do, but, advice like, hey, everybody that comes down and goes fishing wants to go out and go drink. He says, you got to separate yourself from that. You've got a job to do the next morning, but things like that, he told me a whole lot about the business, and,
These things that you learn with time in it. You gotcha. Yeah.
So all of those guys have had a real special influence on me, and really, I'm my own fisherman. I've absolutely learned to fish on my own, and done it with feet on the ground. People say, how did you learn all this? And I'm like,
one step at a time.
One step at a time, man. Eyeballs on my feet, when I was first getting started, had little bitty boats, and I would park them and I'd walk for miles, and, there's rock line here, in Baffin, things like that. And I don't have much of a memory for anything, but I have a really detailed memory for fishing and water. And I don't know why that is. I can tell you, clients will say, remember that day? And I'm like, oh yeah, we were fishing so-and-so, and you had on that, that plum bass assassin. I was telling you to take off that yellow jig head and put on and they're like, dude, how do you remember that? And I don't know why I process like that, but I do.
Oh, yeah.
So, but a lot of, not to get off the subject, but these guys all had such a great influence, and there's a lot of other ones. I don't have time to mention them, but there's just been so many just really, really cool guys that
Of course.
have had a great influence on me. Guys I wish you could have gotten an interview with before.
Well, yeah. So another couple of guys I wish I would have been able to do would have been like Chuck Skates, Chris Phillips, and a handful of others that I think I've heard so many times over and over again. Before we hop into the desalination stuff, when I walked in here, there was a fly rod in the garage. I'm a little curious as to David Rowsey, the fly fisherman.
Oh yeah, that's a fun subject because not a lot of people know that I fly fish, and I don't do it very well, but I'm efficient. So I told you my grandfather Lejeune.
Yes,
he was a fly fisherman, and I never really did it with him, but I was around it from a young age. When I got on the Guadalupe River, when I moved to Texas, I had a float tube, and there was an old fly rod laying around. My stepdad's got it out, and anyway, started messing with it and got real efficient at catching bass. And we had smallmouth in the river also, and I got pretty good at catching them on the fly rod. And it was just a fun thing to do, just to kill an hour, just go jump in the tube, go throw under some cypress limbs, and catch a big perch or whatever. And so at some point in my 20s, just to change the game, I had a little scooter, and I'd run out here north of the causeway on the flats and the Dead Man Kate's Hole area. And, I'd get out, even though I was appraising, I would get out in the dark of the morning and fish for a couple hours, come in, shower, then go do my day job. So I did that. When I say before I was guiding, I was still fishing 5-6 days a week.
Gotcha.
Doing that, couple, 3 hours at a time, end of the day, beginning of the day. And anyway, started getting pretty good at catching reds, and so I really enjoyed it. And I might go a year or two without doing it just because something else, I was on some other quest, like maybe that big trout I couldn't catch, things like that. But the last few years, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, when we get into the heat of the summer, my fishing season starts in November, and I can go 5-6 days a week through May, and then it'll start barely slowing down in June. Still a busy month. July it's starting to slow down pretty good for me, but just to break the monotony, and if knowing who my clients are, if I've got some really top shelf clients that I don't have to
babysit or something like that. Not babysit, but like coach.
Yeah. Guys that are really, really good, and a bunch of them are just flipping through my head right now. The only rod I'll take with me is the fly rod that day. Yeah. And they're like, what are you doing? And so great story for me because it was a first. I'll probably never duplicate it again. But we were in Baffin on the tide gauge. Everybody was catching fish. I got out of the boat, was catching them traditional way, and sun got up to about 10 o'clock, and the fishing was just really good that day. And it's just like not every cast, but it was just, if you knew what you were doing, you were catching fish. Mm-hmm. And my guys are really efficient, that group. And I said, hey, I'm going to grab my fly rod and jump up on the bar and just see what's up here. And because that's always kind of been my thing for summer fishing with clients. Fish for trout till about 9:30 because the bite will kind of start dying off regardless of majors and minors. And then we would go sight casting for the rest of the day. I don't have a sight casting boat, but we'd get out on the flats and walk. And it's gotten a lot harder to do because of all the boat traffic.
Yeah. Go figure.
And so I get up on the tide gauge, and I hadn't gone very far, and saw a black drum. And my favorite fly for me, if I just had one go-to, it's a black braided spoon.
Really? A spoon? Interesting.
That little black braided drum. And I like it because drum will eat the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And if you don't know black fly fishing for drum, you better learn it.
Yeah, no, it's my favorite thing is throwing small little dark flies at them. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll catch a drum right off the bat, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and I see about a 24-inch redfish and make a bad cast, and he darts off, and within a minute I see him again, and I make a perfect cast, and whoop, I got him on, and I'm like, all right, this is going great. And I switched to like some type of clouser, and I was literally just getting it out and getting my line out, seeing what it was going to look like in the water, and I get a hit, and I bring it in. It's about a 3-pound flounder. So now I've got the red, I've got a black drum, and I've got a flounder.
Okay.
And I moved up to the next set of real pretty potholes that were just super skinny, 8 inches of water. And I'm sitting there, and there's like this long, just narrow sand strip. And I can see in the back of the sand strip, there's a fish coming to me. And I'm thinking, it's long, it's probably a red. It starts coming up to me about halfway. Before I can even get a cast on it, I realize it's a trout.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, all right, I'm a good sight caster with a rod and reel. Mm-hmm. I'm very efficient. And I catch black drum all day long on lures. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I make a cast where I think this fish is going to come, and I'm just letting my line sit there. And sure enough, he comes, and I start getting it right in his lane, and I get it in the lane way before he's there, and I'm just letting it sit, and it's probably on the bottom, and he gets about a foot from it, and I bet I don't move it an inch, and he just darts in, gets it, set the hook, 6.5 pounds. So I got a grand slam on my fly
insane.
rod. Yeah. So I'll probably never do it again, but I did it that day, and it keeps me trying. And I fly fish some this summer, and I have the last few years. I've been doing it. I'm really fortunate. I had my doctor out on Padre Islands, a guy named Tom Durrell, and he's only doing emergency room work now, and I think he's getting pretty close to retiring, but he's a fly fishing guide here also.
Okay. And
Tom and I have hunted and fished a lot together, quail, deer. I mean, we just became really good friends over the sale of an old Jeep Scrambler that I was trying to get him to buy. And Tom is a badass fly fisherman, and he loves to pole, which is great for me because I cannot control those damn boats. I've tried, I'm just overdoing everything. They're doing 360s.
Been there.
Yeah. And Tom, he helped me a lot, teaching me to
what hull?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, doing that type of thing. And we went out one day, and we were here in this little bay called Nighthawk, and we'd been out all day, and we'd had a slow day, and we got up there in super skinny water, and there was a school of drum up there, and we could see them from far off, and we walked up there, and we got in there, and Tom's talking shit to me because he's just one of these beautiful fly cast guys, and I'm just like I'm efficient,
trying to get it there.
Yeah. And anyway, we're up there, and we're seeing these drum, and of course I put on my little black spoon, and I get it out there, and I'm like, and I look over at him, and he's like, what? And I caught like 3 or 4. And he hadn't caught one. I look over, he's got one hooked up. I pop a couple more, and we get back on the boat. And he's like, damn, man. He's like, you did really good. And he's messing with me. And he said, the deal is you're not a great fly caster. And I said, yeah, I get it.
You're just fishy.
Yeah. He said, but good God, he said, you're fishy. He said, you know how to present it, where to get it, where to intersect them. And so I've got that going for me when I fly fish. It's just I'm fishy. I know what they're going to, I know how fish are going to react. And, so, that's pretty much my fly fishing history. I enjoy doing it. It's a great way to break the monotony in the summer when I've been fishing for months and months. And so it's just a fun thing to do. And, I don't care if I catch a black drum or a rat red. It's fun.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Yeah.
It's like bow hunting, I can shoot a spike, and it might as well be a 200-inch deer, as long as I make a clean kill. So
that's a good way to look at it. I totally agree as well. It would be cool if whenever you're in the area, we could definitely go out there on my boat and do some fly fishing.
I'd love to do that. I don't make it down south, but so you'll have to call and invite me.
Yeah,
yeah.
I have no problem doing that.
I'll need a directive. Say, come on, let's go.
Okay. Well, all right. Next topic, and the last topic before we close it out: desalination.
Okay. Not an expert. Just tell you what I know about it, and and how I got involved in it. And it's a hot topic around here. I don't know if you follow local politics in Corpus. And,
Your page on Facebook and Instagram is one of the only real sources besides like a little bit from Shane Bonneau and the video he did for CCA and stuff like that about desalination that I'm aware of.
Yeah. So I get a phone call a few months ago, and a fishing guide calls another fishing guide. Fishing guide calls me and says, "Do you know anything about this?" I'm like, "I have no clue." And we find out that this Seven Seas organization is business company is going to build this desal in the back of Baffin, and it's actually in Driscoll, but it's going to be draining straight into Baffin. And they're promoting it as this super clean water, blah blah blah. But as the story unfolds, there's just all kinds of problems, with permitting, and all this is being done fast track. And they're so secretive about it. We found out they've already built one in Alice that's already dumping into one of, I think that one's dumping right into Petronia Creek. So they're already dumping water in it already.
Really?
Yeah, it's really crazy how all this happened. And I'm on the water just a few days later, and I get a phone call from Dr. David McKee, who is someone you ought to interview.
Okay.
And,
I'll take his number from you after this.
Yeah, McKee. So he was Billy's best friend also.
Understood.
And he was he taught marine biology out here at Corpus Christi A&M. He also, if you ever get the chance to interview him, when you go to his place, you'll be in his shop, and he's got the largest saltwater antique lure collection in the world. Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me real quick before we keep going. We talked about the top water with no hook in the middle.
Oh yeah. That is something, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due, and I think I'm giving credit to the right person. I think it was McBride that told me to take the middle hook off. So, the spook's got 3 hooks, and, that sounds great for, hooking up. But whenever you'd catch a fish on one, that thing might be behind his head, or, that middle hook, you never knew where it was going to be. And I didn't do it because I was worried about damaging the fish at the time. But McBride, and if somebody else told me this, I apologize, but I'm 90% sure it was McBride that told me to take the middle hook off. But what would happen when you took the middle hook off, just almost inevitably when you would hook a trout, you would have the front hook in the corner of his mouth, and the other hook would be like on the side of his gill plate almost every time. So you didn't have all these weird hookups, to where the fish could turn back on the lure and get it tangled in the hook so that it's in some weird position on its head. And I taught a lot of people after the fact to do that. But it's a better hook set. It sits on the fish better, and you just, absolutely landed more fish.
Okay. I wanted to make sure we got that. So when you said lure collection, it fired it up. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking again inside his shop. You were saying.
Yeah. So if you get a chance to interview David McKee, Dr. David McKee, you'll just be blown away by his place and what you'll see and the history in there. I mean, the guy is I do not use this word loosely. He is an absolute encyclopedia of the history of fishing on the Texas coast. It is really an interview you'll want to do.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm on the water and get a phone call from David. And he's like, "Hey, man," he goes, "there's some people getting together at my house this afternoon, these Seven Seas deal." And he goes, "Do you know anything about it?" And I was like, "Well, in fact, yeah, I just learned something about it 2 days ago." And he says, "One of their representatives is coming over, and they want to talk to me, and I want to have, I'd like you to come over." And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Are they cool if I come over?" And he's like, "I don't care. Just come over."
They have to be.
Yeah, it's my place. You're invited. And, all right, cool. So I get over there, and it's this lady that's representing Seven Seas, and a local man that's run. And forgive me, I'm not remembering their names at the moment. He's repping them and trying to get backing for this thing. Not lobbyist, is not consultant. Not a lobbyist. He's posing as a consultant. When we get there, and I asked David, I said, can somebody else, I said, are you cool if anybody comes with me? And he's like, well, yeah, if you want to bring one person, that's fine. And Chad Petterick, another fishing guide here, we had been talking on the water, and he's actually the one that told me about it via the other fishing guide. And so I called him. I said, hey, do you want to go to this deal with me? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, come on, man, let's go together.
Yeah.
So we went over there together, and maybe it was the next day, because it gave me enough time to do some research. Yeah, so it was the next day. It wasn't the same day. And so anyway, asked a lot of hard questions. They told their side of the story, and we're like, well, what if this? What if that? And anyway, a lot of things just weren't lining up, and did some research on the company. They had problems in other places, and the whole deal with dumping this right into the bay was just not a good idea.
Just stupid. I get it.
Yeah, because Baffin is almost like a lake. It's landlocked back there. There's almost no tidal flow. I mean, everything's wind driven. And I mean, it's a hyper saline bay already. It's very unique. So things just weren't adding up. So it was good to get out there and have a conversation with these people. And everything was real civil and cool, but we didn't agree, but everything was civil. And then we find out that the South Texas, the South Texas Water Authority was having a public meeting with regards to this. And, they were all buying in on it. This was going to be, they didn't have to invest any money. This company builds the facility, and the communities buy the fresh water from them. Sounds like a great deal. And, well, we get there, and, word is spread now that all this is going to be dumped into Baffin. So between Chad and I and a whole bunch of other people, we just started recruiting on social media, to get people there that, I mean, if you're in the tourism, restaurant, hotel, fishing guide, bait shop, I mean, this affects all of you. This is not a small deal.
If you're anywhere near a waterman, or if that, like anywhere, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
This could have a just huge negative impact on you. And, we've done enough research now, because this was a couple weeks later, that we got to rally the troops, went over there, and, the mayor of Kingsville was there, and there was all this banter going back and forth, and the mayor wasn't even aware of all this stuff. And anyway, it just raised a lot of red flags. This little bitty room, not much bigger than the room we're in, had maybe twice the size, had 100 people in it, fishermen and And so that got the red flags thrown up in the air. And going on through some time, and, that South Texas Water Authority, doing their own research, to their great credit, said, there's just no way we're letting this dump into Baffin. This is just not good. And the deal was, there's a lot of other effective ways to get rid of this brine and chemicals, shooting it back downhole, old wells and stuff. It's on a different layer than where the fresh water is. But the problem is, it's more expensive to them building it. So they didn't want to do it. The cheap route is to go straight into the bay. So anyway, that's great news. They're going to make them go downhole with it. So, Baffin dodges a bullet. Well, at the same time, Corpus Christi, and you need to do some research on this, Corpus Christi's got its own desal project going. And it's at the Inner Harbor. The Inner Harbor is the port where all the tankers and everything is. And they've got, 3 years ago, they had a bid of like $300 million to build this desal. And they haven't broke ground or anything like that. At today's date, that's gone from $300 million to $1.2 billion. And here's the kicker. And look, I'm a capitalist, man. I love everybody to make money. I'm all about it. I'm all for industry, everything done the right way. But the deal was, the community, and to this day, is really upset. Our plants out here use 70% of our fresh water. Okay, 70%. But they need that water to be successful and make their products. But at the same time, my lawn's burned up, and my place usually looks like a golf course, and I can't water my grass, And And so now this desal plant is now $1.2 billion. And they're pulling the water in from the port, okay, which is kind of, you would guess, is probably a little bit polluted from all the shipping and everything in there. So they're taking all that nasty water, going to turn it into fresh drinking water. And here's where the big problem lies. Just like the Seven Seas group, they weren't going to dump it in Baffin, they're going to dump it into Corpus Christi, really Nueces Bay, which is a really small oyster-laden bay. They were going to dump it into there. Then they're saying that all the outflow will go in and out and everything. And it's just, there's just not, the only environmental impact studies they had done was by the contractor. They didn't have, these independent scientists looking at this. The ones that did were like, this will never work. And here's the thing, there's desal plants all over the world, but they have one thing in common. And this is the thing. And myself personally, not against desal. Okay. Not many people around here are. Dumping it in the bay.
There's a difference. The discharge is the problem.
Discharge is the problem. Yes. So instead of discharging it like they do everywhere else in the world, which is piping it offshore 5+ miles, they're going to dump it in the bay. That's the big hang up. And the price tag. So we went through this whole same process here in Corpus, and last Tuesday at the city council, the day they were going to vote it in, thank God, 6 of the councilmen voted against it. Now we're on the hook already for the money they've already spent, like $250 million for just starting the project on paper, design and all of that. So it's just a mess around Corpus right now because of this. And our city leaders, they just, it's typical Corpus though. Everything around here, you notice driving in on my street, how bad my street is. Street's 50 years old, it's never been redone. And that's all a Corpus. Mine's just an example.
I sat in like 10 minutes of traffic in the middle of one of the back roads over here because of road work. So I can understand.
Well, and you probably came in on Yorktown, didn't you? Yeah. Well, and that's a great example of the way our city works. They built this monster school back there without doing the infrastructure first. So now you got people trying to get their kids in and out of school. Yeah. It's a 1-lane construction. But that's what they do. Yeah. I mean, it's so Corpus, and that's like a cliche around here now. It's just Corpus, man. So, anyway, so right now, we're good. We've killed the deal, and they're still going to try to bring it back. And if they would just get on board and do it the right way, it wouldn't be a major issue. If they piped it offshore, they would have 90% vote support in the community.
It seems like it, yeah.
But they're just Corpus is just notorious for doing everything on the cheap. Stepping over $1 to pick up a dime. That's what they do. And it's just, so that's just kind of my history with desal. I am not, most people that know me know I'm not a big social media guy. I get on there for my own selfish needs, sell my boat. If I get a cancellation, I might say, hey, I got a cancellation. Anybody, book it back real fast. Or for something like this that I have, or when I was so involved with the trout deal, trying to get them to lower their trout.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, didn't. But I use it for that kind of stuff. I don't lurk on it. Anyway, but I use it for that kind of stuff. And, I've got enough followers that I can get the message out, and, between myself and other guides and people that are a whole lot smarter about this desal stuff, but they just feed us constantly, with data and round the troops up. And, I wish this place was just run a lot smoother, but it's just South Texas politics. And, we defeated a couple battles, that are really big, and hopefully I want them to come back to desal, and I want it done. It needs to be done. And, I've already said it, but, just speaking for the community, if they would just pipe the crap offshore, they would just have total support for it, but they just doing Corpus stuff. So,
Well, South Texas politics, that gave me a kind of if you want, because we're at an hour and a half, if you want to go a little bit into the trout limits and regulations and what that was like, and then we can end it. Or if
Yeah, that's fine. We can touch on that.
yeah, I mean, I think it's really important because I was such a big advocate for it when I like even before the freeze, mostly right after though, and it was one of those things where I would get into it with a guy on Facebook or whatever, and so I had the book World Class Texas Trout Tomorrow by Scott L. Murray. So I would take pictures that, let's say I was getting into it with some random guy on Facebook. I would send him pictures. I'd give paragraphs, whatever, and I'd get responded to by saying something along the lines of, I ain't reading all that. It was like, dude, like, how can you feel so strong and passionate over something that you're so uneducated about?
Scott would say that?
No. Whoever I was talking to on Facebook.
I was going to say, that's the process.
No.
Yeah,
Scott would definitely be 100% looking at his own data.
Yeah. And Scott's another one of those guys that I was real fortunate to get to meet. And our relationship was always on the conservation side and how we can do better by baffing in the fishery. So continue.
Well, yeah. So that I think that that's a very important thing is to, for example, just 3-4 days ago, I saw a guy post on Facebook on the South Padre Concierge saying like those extremist communists that work at TPWD are limiting us and this, that, and the other thing. And I commented and he was like, I'm going to make a call. And I was like, you know what, man, you make that call. Or you can get educated on what actually is going on, what caused the limits. And for you to say something as insane and inflammatory as there were extremists running TPWD just shows the lack of knowledge you have in this space. So for your own good, you should probably just go outside and enjoy it. But it was one of those things where it's like, I think it's super important for me, which is why I would like kind of you tell your I guess your perception of how all that went and stuff like that.
Well, Parks and Wildlife is known for a while that the fishery was, they say it's good and level, but you got to understand how Parks and Wildlife counts their numbers. They start counting fish. I'm not exaggerating, from the length of about the tip of your finger to your first knuckle. Okay. And those are part of the numbers that they're using to say that we have a good fishery. But guys out here on the water, I mean, prior to the freeze, for 3 years prior to the freeze, we were just seeing a drastic, hard decline. I mean, it was getting so bad. We would go weeks without catching a 7-pound trout. And that's just unheard of down here. I mean, if you know what you're doing and know where to be, you ought to be catching 7-pound trout and bigger. And we just weren't getting it done. It was, and, but then, we had the 21 freeze. And I think we lost about 80% of our trout, and I think was the number that I heard. And I'm looking at this from so many angles. First of all, I'm a hardcore fisherman. I want a great fishery. And then I look at it from the guiding perspective, it's just going to be so many disappointing days. And, it's crazy. My books never fell off. Guys kept coming, and they knew the deal. And God bless them. I mean, they kept me in business, and many others like me. And, but, it just became real apparent, they went into that deal where they went to the 3 fish, what was it, 17 to 23?
That was the sunset clause, the first one, yep.
Yeah. And then they were just going to turn it back over to 5, and the way it was. And we really, really raised a lot of hell. And thank God there was a lot of people with a lot of power that are fishermen that was really able to get in their ear, and just a huge grassroots effort again, kind of like desal. But this went on for, a year and a half, and lots of trips to Austin to speak in front of the board and recruiting people to go speak. And, oh man, you can't believe the names I've been called and this and that, because, a lot of the guys that like to kill, of course, they don't want any kind of restrictions. And I hate laws as much as anybody. I really do. And, but, there comes a time and a place when you got to realize, it's a supply and demand deal. There's too many hands in the pot taking too much out, and, Baffin Bay, for example, is like 45 miles from, maybe 45 miles from the Mansfield jetty and like 60 miles to the Port A jetty. So we're not getting big influxes of fish. They just don't migrate. Our fish get big here because they're just, they're just homies. They're a different genetic breed, and the more you take out, the less and less of that genetic that you got. And there's at some point you got to manage it for the numbers of people and the quality of the fish. And Parks and Wildlife has a real hard time understanding the value of a trout.
Interesting.
What I mean by that, and I've had this conversation with very high ups at Parks and Wildlife, they're like, well, the drum fishery is unbelievable. We got so many drum out there. And I'm like, Parks and Wildlife guy, people aren't buying these $150,000 boats to chase
look for drum.
I was like, y'all are missing the whole deal. They're out here to catch trophy fish.
Thank you. Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah, and the connection is that Parks and Wildlife is funded by license sales. They're funded by boat sales, the taxes, trailer sales, from all sporting equipment, actually. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not knocking down the guy that goes and fishes drum. I love drum. It's my favorite fish to eat, but it's a hard fish to catch as a sport fisherman. Mm-hmm. So Parks and Wildlife just, they're scientists, man. They just look at it as fish or fish in a lot of ways. And so getting them to understand where, so much of their funding was coming from the fishermen was a big deal. And, I'm not saying that changed their mind. The fishery itself changed their mind, but they had kind of painted themselves into a corner a little bit, saying that we have this tremendous fishery, and we do if you count those little knuckle-long fish.
Yeah.
But those, people, hey, babe.
Hey. No sweat.
He can edit it out.
I'm not editing it out. We're good.
People aren't spending all this money on hotels and all, boats and everything to catch knuckle-long fish or even to catch 15-inch fish. It's not about, so there's this whole culture of fishermen out here. Half want to kill everything. I think less than half, actually.
I was going to say, I feel like that part I think has diminished more.
It has. And I can talk about that some too, what I see. But what's really paying their bills are these guys paying the boats and, this fishery, people are coming here to chase big fish. And they understand now that they've understood for a long time. We've been doing catch and release on these fish for years. When I started guiding in 05, 06, my rule on my boat was no fish over 20 inches. Back then, it was a 10 fish limit. And I'd only let you keep 5. This was way before, they switched it.
It was like 10 or 15 or 10?
10.
10, yes.
But I had my own rules on my boat.
Gotcha. Yep.
And, but anyway, the freeze, I've told people like this. I said, as devastating as the freeze was, in a way, it did us a huge favor because
I also agree.
Yeah, it forced Parks and Wildlife, to make some decisions that were going to benefit us down the road. Because if we kept it at 5, you could keep 1 over 25 every day. It was never going to recover. There's just, there's 2 million saltwater stamps sold every year. Mm-hmm. And not everybody's fishing every day, of course, but everybody that comes down, even if they fish once or twice a year, and I don't blame them. They feel entitled to keep their limit, but there's millions doing that, and then guides taking them out. And I mean, I'm a guide, but some of the guides are, they're the worst.
Yeah, they'll run 2 trips a day, and like they'll try to just limit out every single day. And I totally agree where you're coming from. I do think that like the way Jay Watkins explained it to me one time, which was just a random phone call, like just literally, it was right when all this was going down. And I was driving to take my boat to a mechanic, and I just get a random phone call from Jay, and we started telling me about a little bit about what was going on behind the scenes, basically saying like, hey, like it looks like the sunset clause is going to be permanent, something along those lines. And then he alluded to big trout, like a really big buck. And his whole thing was like, well, what's the point of like, why are you removing so many big buck genes from the gene pool. And there's so many people who come here just to say that they triumphed over this big fish. But now we're not even letting them do that. And obviously, like, that was kind of where he put it. But the way I kind of continued it in some other podcast was, well, if we keep on doing that and keep on removing all the big fish, we're just going to end up with a similar fishery to Louisiana and not even have the numbers.
Yeah.
Just the sizes. So it didn't make sense. It really felt, and I think this is kind of where you're going with this, it really felt like Texas did not care to be a trophy trout fishery. Or not care, but it felt like it was unaware of what it could hold.
Well, I think they care, but one thing I've learned about the whole parks and wildlife deal, and they're great guys. They really are. There's some really good people there. And I obviously don't agree with everything that they do, but you know, we've been able to have open conversations. But Parks and Wildlife cares. I honestly believe that they do. But what I've learned dealing with Parks and Wildlife is how political it all is.
That's what Shane and Patrick Murray both told me.
Yeah, it is such a political animal to get anything done. And, you know, I have side conversations with some of these guys, and you're like, I know we need to do something, but it's just, you got to go through this and this and this and this. And there's so many steps. And, you know, they still get a lot of bad press, you know, from the kill crowd.
Yep.
But, you know, and it's crazy because when I talk to them one-on-one, guys like us, we need to send them more emails or something and encourage them. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm like, hey, that's not what I'm seeing out here. I'm like, everybody's clapping you on the back, man.
Yep.
But they're not getting to hear it enough. And
because a lot of people who are mad about it will make posts about it.
Yeah, that's what I've told them. I said, you're only going to hear from the angriest people. You know, they're going to blow up your emails or whatever. I said, but far and away what I see out here on the water is people are so glad it's done. They know that our bays cannot take this pounding, especially after a freeze. We've got to have time to rebound.
Yeah.
And, you know, doing it the way we did, or doing it the way it's been done, it's going to give a chance for everybody to take fish home, you know, because there's multiple species out here, drum, reds, trout, flounder, but it's also going to, the guys that want to catch the big
trophy fish, it gives them that angle. Yep.
It's going to protect them as well. So it's a win-win, and it's something that really has to be done to protect the fishery so we've got sustainable numbers in the future. And, you know, I was really loud and proud about it, and I didn't care who I pissed off.
I didn't care who I pissed off.
Well, no, trust me, I got lots of hate mail. And it's actually pretty comical.
Yeah.
But that's fine. You know, I just consider the source and move on down the road. And I knew getting into this and being this passionate about it that I was going to be made out by one group to be a bad guy. And that's fine. I don't really give a shit.
Yeah. You shouldn't. Fuck that.
Yeah. And but anyway, it's gotten done. We're already seeing huge number increases in the bay. Had a great big trout year this year. It's still low by my standards, but just watching the 4-year improvement.
It feels like it's improved a lot.
Yeah,
you know?
It really has. And we kind of touched on something earlier, and I'm going to just
please do
go back to it real quick. You know, the younger generation guys your age are doing unbelievable. They are all about the sport, catch and release. There's very, you know, I'm so proud of you guys. It's guys my age at, you know, mid 50s, some younger, you know, they've got that old school mentality. Where
it's my right, it's my water. I got you.
Yeah. And, you know, I've had that discussion, and I'd say discussion, heated debates. It's not a right to, you know, I mean, you know, it's not written in the damn Constitution that you get to kill just because there's fish to be killed, you know. There's all kinds of examples around the world where, you know, we overdid something.
Yeah. A quick side point. Mike McBride and I were chatting on Facebook one time. We were teaming up against some random guy posting on Facebook about how mad he was, give or take, something like that. And I said something along the lines of like, well, it's because you're treating it like a grocery store, not a fishery. And even Mike was like, nah, that's a really good way to look at it. It's a fishery, not a grocery store.
Yeah, I've had that exact argument with guys. They're like, man, I've got guys coming on my boat to feed their families. I'm like,
Yeah, right.
dude, if they can afford a fishing charter, you know how much ground meat you can buy for a fishing charter price? Don't.
How many Pizza Hut pizzas you can buy for a fishing charter price? Like, for real.
Yeah, so that's like the dumbest argument in the world. But a lot of folks got involved, and that was a really long battle. And it wasn't just that year and a half. I'd been trying to go more conservative for years.
Yeah.
And,
Well, before that, it just felt like anyone who had that conservative mindset was just speaking at a wall. Like, it felt like every time you try to say something, is it a little bit more modern terminology, but you'd get little broed by so many people on Facebook because it was just the ratio of people that just felt it was their right and that they knew more than you. It literally felt like you were trying to talk to like this amalgamation of an echo chamber. It's like, oh, and so it was so vindicating to feel that, guys like us were finally being heard.
Yeah. And, I was in a public meeting, Parks and Wildlife public meeting one day, and I won't say any names, but or mention it, the guy in particular, but he's a friend of mine, but he's more on the kill side. He loves to fish. He's a great fisherman. And he raised his hand and said, we don't need to change the fishery to make this a trophy fishery. And and I'm like, whoa. I said, here's the deal. We're not trying to make it a trophy fishery. It's always been a trophy fishery.
Yep.
We have been throwing croakers steadily in it since, say, 95. And I said, we have turned it into just a fishery. We just, it was already the best trophy fishery in the world, for speckled trout. So we're not trying to make something new here. We're trying to just get it back to a semblance of what it used to be, and
that's, I like that you said that, because even, and I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but I really like the points you're making. I remember, talking to some folk and when all this was going on and hearing the same thing over and over of like, there's just enjoy what you have now because it won't ever go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
And it feels like, again, guys like us get a little bit of vindication now because it's like you see the limits work and it's in your fucking face. Like, look at that. Like I can, like, Craig Woolley was a guy who I know down in South Padre, or I know of. 1 week he hit 9 or 10 fish over 7 pounds. It's like, where were those fish 4 years ago? They weren't there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought that was an important point to make.
So this is an interesting take. I'll just talk to some random people at the boat ramp, and when I get in at the end of the day, and some young bucks that are stud, lure fishermen, and they're like, "Dude, we killed it today," and I'm like, "Well, what'd y'all do?" Because I'm thinking about what my day was like when I didn't kill it, and they're like, "Well, this one wade we had 6 over 4, 2 5s, and a 6," and I'm just like, "Geez." And to me, yeah, by today's numbers, that's pretty solid. But what you don't understand is what it used to be.
Yeah.
And I am not exaggerating. Get out of the boat, good guys. And there are so many days that you could catch 100 fish on a wade that average 4 to 5 pounds with your biggers, mixed in. I mean, we had days like that regularly. And, it's hard for people to understand that are, younger, that have never experienced that, to know where we came from, to how low we've gotten. Yep. And, they think this fishery's doing good now because they caught those 4 and 5 pounders. Man, you have no clue what you're missing. And I said this on another podcast, and this is a true statement. There was a time, if I went into Baffin Bay, with, say, normal conditions, if I didn't walk out of there with at least 3 fish over 7 pounds, caught, landed, it was a shit day. Shit day. And when I first started guiding, it was about, it was early on in me guiding, so maybe like 2009 or 8 or something like that. I keep a journal too. And fishing, say, 5 out of 7 days a week. But, when you add all those numbers up, on charters, I had 73 days in a row on charter where we caught at least one trout over 7 pounds, with clients. And a lot of those days would have 5, plus, and, there'd be some 30 inchers mixed here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so that was in the, mid to late 2000s. And, I mean, I can't even imagine having waves like that anymore. And I think I truly believe, though, in my heart of hearts, and I am an optimist, that it's going to come back.
You really do think it's over the horizon?
I really do. If they maintain these limits and, tweak a few things that take place out here.
I also agree. But the thing is, how do you tweak it? How do you regulate bad etiquette in terms of driving, in terms of, again, the burn boats? Like, that's just an impossibility. Like, especially with our bay system.
It's not an impossibility.
Well, I mean, it isn't, but I'd love to hear the way that you kind of see it.
Well, if you want to talk burning in particular,
just what we got driving and etiquette.
Yeah. There's already laws on the books about harassing fish and other fishermen. Mm-hmm. Okay. The problem is they don't get enforced because Parks and Wildlife doesn't have enough money to have game wardens on the water. Yeah. So there's already laws,
especially in Texas, where we deal a lot with Border Patrol. That's another issue, but yeah.
Yeah. So, if you could just have wardens out there to regulate it, that would be enough in itself. Again, I mentioned I don't care for lots of unnecessary laws, but when you can compare Texas to somewhere like Florida or
totally agree. Yep.
Something like Montana or Wyoming and the way they treat their fisheries, we're like cavemen compared to them.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
You could do something to say, I'm stepping out on a ledge here, but not really, don't really care. But, you can't, we got the King Ranch here, basically 20 miles long, and really no obstructions. There's no reason that you can't be offshore to run, very few areas. You could limit, outboard power to idle within 100 yards. Just say 100 yards, 200 be ideal, because down here you can wade that far offshore. But, just saying it is absolute law, that you cannot run within 100 yards of the shoreline on plane unless, there's a weather advisory or, something like that where you've got to get out of it.
Like blowing over 30 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And just make it a law. Then, you put some signs out there and the warden sits inside that deal and sees you running down the shoreline and you're getting a ticket. And, it's the behavior is changing the whole fishery. I told Watkins the other day, I was like, man, I said, I didn't catch any fish on the King Ranch this year, shallow. The only way you can catch them shallow is if you land on them first wade in the morning, before the boats run in the dark. You get out, establish your area, cross your fingers, and then you'll have a good shoreline wade, But after the sun comes up and the boats start, and, tournament times, oh my God, it's just unbelievable. It's just whoa. And there have been many, I've had many close calls with people getting just crazy close to clients, and, I don't know if they're being assholes or if they just didn't see them. But and I'm just one guy. Everybody's got a million stories about it. But it's really changing the fishery in a negative way. And, I don't want laws. I want people just to act right.
How do you get so many people to act right?
Well, and that's the thing. Bad behavior procreates more bad behavior,
Monkey see, monkey do.
Monkey see, monkey do. You said it.
Yeah.
And so, it's a bad little cycle we're in.
Yeah.
And, I hate for there to be more laws, and at some point somebody's going to get killed, and that's what it's going to take.
Yep. No, I totally agree.
I saw a post on Facebook this morning. Someone had posted, this burn boat, and he goes, I could taste the exhaust, and and I've had my own personal experiences with them, so, but like I said, it's, the gun doesn't kill people. It's the people that kill people.
And the shooter and driver.
It's I'm not picking on bird boats. I'm picking on bad behavior. It's
Yep.
real important to understand because I know lots of guys that run burn boats do it, as responsibly as it can be done. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to point those guys out, but things like that. The fishery. When they're spawning, it's really a big deal. The trout are spawning up in that shallow grass, to dump their eggs. They do it really shallow. It's just everything about it, is just not good for the fishery.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. One of my examples that I kind of make every now and then is they're in kind of to piggyback of what you said about some people eventually might die, and that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Is like, man, sometimes I'll be fishing near the ICW on the spoils in South Padre, right? And I will literally watch. This is one of the dumbest things I watched recently, and it was one of those things that just genuinely blew me away. It's this one guy, and this happened for over 45 to 50 minutes, right? So the first 10 minutes, I'm fishing way south, kind of near Stover, just trying to see if big trout are moving up. And I can hear this boat from behind me, and he's running zigzag between the just deep enough part and the way too shallow part. So his water goes for the water coming from the outboard goes white to slightly brown to white to slightly brown to white. And he does this for a long time, gets to about me, opens wide, keeps going down into the Cullen area, and continues to do it. And I'm literally like, what the fuck is this guy doing? So I spin up, I start drive by him. When I pass him, he was completely stuck on one spot. And it was just one of those deals where it's like, you kind of did it to yourself. I don't feel bad for you. So I kept going, fished another spot. About 20 minutes later, get up. We're going down the ICW. Same boat comes out of one of the little spoil islands coming from the west side. And this is just, you could just tell, like there was no knowledge behind the eyes of this driver. But the ICW is going, you know how the boats will like to park out on the edges to fish for flounder, right? So you run through the middle. This guy ran up on the shoulder between the shoreline and the boats fishing. There may have not even been 50 yards.
Oh yeah.
Not even fucking 50. It was one of those things where it's like, I was fishing with a not a client, a buddy named Alex. And I said, there's a high chance we see this guy die right here, right now, because there was so many oysters in the area. You could just tell it was like, had his engine been a little lower, end of the lower unit.
Yeah.
Oh, that pisses me off.
Yeah. There's so many of those guys. I call them all hat and no cattle cowboys.
Yep.
They, you can just really tell, these guys are doing it because they see other people do it and they don't even know what the hell they're doing. They don't even know what they're looking for. And this is the thing about it. It's the most selfish behavior to other fishermen that are, out there, because you have just ruined miles and miles of fishing for anybody that wants to partake in the sport of fishing that day.
Literally, yeah.
And it's just the most selfish damn behavior. And I like to think that people are better than that, but some are, some aren't. Again, not the boat. It's
the driver.
It's the driver.
Yeah.
And I don't know. At some point, just like we're saying, not to be repetitive, but somebody's going to get hurt, and then laws are going to change.
Likely.
So.
Okay. Well, we are at the 2 hour and 2 minute mark. You've killed it. Like I always end off on two last questions. Okay. You don't have to go on a tangent on it. You've done enough already. The first question is, looking back at your entire career and everything that you've done, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently?
Good question. I don't have to think about this very long. No.
Good.
No, I like the way I do it. I know in my heart of hearts I'm a salty, fishy guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't need to take special steps to catch fish. I treat my clients good. I've taught a lot of people to be really badass lure fishermen. If the weather's bad, I make a conscious decision that I'm going to lose money that day, but I don't take people out just to take their money. So I've got a lot of pride in things like that. Good. And, I tell people I got to sleep at night. So I just try to do everything with, if I was on a charter paying somebody, what
you would want,
what I would want, I can only think of two guys that I've not wanted back on my boat, and I've told them.
Yeah. I mean,
And,
you're supposed to.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like to fish with rookies and teach them as much as I like to fish with advanced fishermen. I get more enjoyment out of watching other people catch big fish now than I am so blessed. I have caught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of giant fish, trout.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just couldn't draw it up any better. I got in it at the right time. I did some things that I didn't even know they were the right moves. But
Interesting. Yeah. Because everything translated over from bass fishing. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so I've been very fortunate. So, I've got a real clear conscience. A lot of people don't like me because of my stance on trout and what have you. But
fuck 'em.
I do it because I really, truly love the
'cause you
fishery. And I wish we could kill every fish out here and it'd never affect it, but that's just not the case. And like I said, I used to kill some big trout. But people have called me a hypocrite because they've seen the pictures.
Oh, but that doesn't count.
No. I'm like, I'm not a hypocrite. The difference is I've matured and learned, and I can see what's going. If you spend as many days on the water as I do, you can see the patterns.
Yep.
So no, I wouldn't change anything.
Good. All right. Well, the last question is kind of as if you're speaking to the next generation. Think 12 to maybe 18, give or take, age kids. What is a piece of advice you'd give them if they wanted to go into the industry, not just the fishing side of things, but just industry in general?
Well, it's not an easy way to make a living. I would tell you first to get a college degree or be an electrician or something like that. If you're truly passionate about fishing, do it on the side until you get a clientele that you want to go with. And I've told a lot of young guides this that are getting into it, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It's the most important thing I think I can tell you. If you want to be a fishing guide and you start doing it, you have got to do it exactly how you love to fish. If you're a fly fisherman, do that.
Interesting.
If you're a lure guy, don't take croaker guys because you need the money. You've got to stand your ground, otherwise you're just going to fall and just be one of there's probably over 2,000 fishing guides on the Texas coast now.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah, so if you don't do it the way that you're passionate about it, don't get into it because it's going to ruin it. I've got lots of personal stories of friends that are great fishermen, that are great examples of that. They just like, F this, man. I was like, well, you shouldn't even be taking. You're a great lure fisherman. You're retired. You don't need the money.
Yeah.
And so that's just the biggest advice. And, and you look at, I've had a lot of young guys tell me, so, because I try to talk them out of guiding, have a real job, do it that way. And they're like, you're really successful. And I go, yeah. I said, but here's what you got to understand. I said, when I started guiding, I already had a lot of name recognition as a big trout guy, won a bunch of tournaments, that sort of thing. And I said, also had a business,
Yep.
And so I didn't necessarily need the money. And, I have built, because of those two things, I've built my clientele to do exactly what I just said. I fish the way I want to fish. If they, if I get a new guy call me and wants to go fishing, first question, I wade fish only with lures. Oh no, I didn't know that. Well, I'm not your guy. I'll give you 10 numbers to call.
Yeah.
And I'm just that steadfast about it. I just don't waver in my style of fishing. I don't drift from the boat. I have, but it's not my forte. You're not going to book me for drift fishing.
Drift trip.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I'm just stubborn and mule-headed like that. If I can't do it the way I enjoy doing it, it's not worth doing.
Gotcha.
And anybody getting into the business, that would be the most important thing I could tell them is you got to do it your way, make yourself special, stand out from the crowd. Don't just fall into the mix of, I'm a lure guide this month. I'm a croaker guide that month. Yeah. I'm a fly fishing guide that month.
Excel at one thing.
Excel at one thing. You can be I've literally never put a hook in a croaker ever. And
it's a good stat to have, honestly.
Yeah, it's a good stat. But, but I know with what I know as a lure fisherman, you know, if I wanted to throw lures, you know, I could go get in that mix and work 365 days a year. Okay. If I wanted to throw bait.
Yeah. Oh, so if you wanted to throw croaker, gotcha.
Yeah. If I wanted to throw bait.
Yes.
And, you know, but at the same time, most of those guys can't come over and do what I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and that's just, you know, that's just from knowledge and time on the water, working lures, confidence, and knowing how to read structure and all this. I mean, you know, croaker fishing's pretty damn easy. I know it's gotten a lot tougher for them, but again, I'm not picking on croaker. Anybody listening to this, I don't care how you catch fish.
Yep.
My deal has never been the lure or the bait. That's something that people need. I would like them to
how you
understand.
want to be respectable about it. I get it.
Yeah. My deal has always been, like I said, it's never I don't care if you lure, bait, gig flounder, whatever. My deal has always been the killing part. You know, the lack of conservation and just thinking it's an endless supply. That's what I've always stood on. And, you know, what I want people to know about me, you know, is, that's it, I guess.
Yeah. No, I guess the great answer. Typically, I end these by asking if there's anything else you want to say, but it seems like you've said everything you wanted to say. So with that being said, David, this has been an honor. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I'm extremely glad that you were receptive to it, especially because, you know, you do give off the old head salty guy who's, you know, gnarled around the edges. So I was kind of expecting a no. So I'm really glad that you wanted to do it. But yeah, with that being said, I think we've covered everything. Well,
I'll say, Andres, that this has been a pleasure. It's great to get to finally meet you.
Absolutely.
I've admired your work and the, you know, that I see. And, you know, something we didn't touch on, but when this didn't you do a big trout petition at one time?
Yeah, I did. You and I chatted about that actually on Facebook way back then.
Yeah. I remembered that. I tied that together in my head at some point of this conversation.
I totally forgot. Yeah, you're right. I reached out to you because I was mad about exactly what we talked about. And we chatted about that for a minute. And then I ended up sending it to you when I did it. And you were like, well, actually, I think you said I've already put one out, or I've already like been a part of one or something like that. But it was, or maybe it was something, I forgot what it was. It was something along, I was like, oh, damn, he's already a step ahead of me. I remember that's what I got from it.
Yeah, I think there was a petition right before you that had gained a lot more ground already. And
I think mine was the one that took over though, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that is good feather in your cap. Well, you know, the fishery, and I mentioned it earlier, but you young guys, man, y'all are where it's at, and y'all get it. Y'all like catching the trophies and doing the cool stuff. And when I'm on my boat, it's just, you know, I'm just amazed at the young guys and the take that they're, you know, the stand that they're on.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're sharp enough to see the future. And you know, I can sit around and tell big trout stories all day long. And, you know, half the time
I think 2 hours that we're good.
No. I'm just saying.
I'm playing. Yes.
You know, I think they think I'm probably full of shit most of the time, but you know, I hope everybody gets to experience the fishery like I've gotten to, because it's just been an amazing. I mean, it's who I am.
It's a life-changing resource.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, on that.
Cool. Well, with that being said, all we got to do is get on out of here.
All right, buddy. Been a pleasure.